That was a great intro. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Evan. Really excited to be here and share my story with everybody. Can everybody hear me clearly and loudly? All right, cool. I'll continue to enunciate. So most of the people here don't know me. One person does. I met Evan's parents as well. But who am I? A little bit about my family background. My grandfather was born in Canton, China. He migrated to Colombia when he was about 14 years old. He met my grandmother, raised a whole family in Colombia, built businesses, and eventually died in Colombia. My parents met in Colombia. They got married and migrated to the US, where me and my siblings were born. I'm the second of 4 children. And as a second child, my mother always said I was special. Never really understood why. I thought it was good, maybe not. I'll let you be the judge of that. And growing up, I've always had a curiosity about the world, how things worked. Whenever I would get a toy, I would take it apart in all the little pieces, and then ultimately put it all back together just to understand how it worked, and it always did work. I was always able to put it back together. And so I always had this deep yearning for a deeper understanding of just how things worked in this world. I've also had a sense of adventure my entire life. Spending my summers in Colombia, I would always go back, visit my family, spend my summers there. So I grew up as a third culture kid. Chinese background, Colombian background, American upbringing. So that's a little bit of who I am. So I'm here to share my story, my path to personal and professional growth. So who's here has heard about the hero's journey? Something? A few? Anybody that raised your hand? Well, can you describe it a little bit?
The hero's journey?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like taking someone who has like a challenge or is faced with some sort of obstacle and pretty much walking them through, like in like mythological, sometimes it's like going into the underworld of like figuring out who you are and kind of unraveling all the stories that you told about yourself to then kind of come out the other side and feel as if you're a new and renewed person, able to take that into the world and help people.
That's perfect. Awesome explanation. Thank you very much. So the hero's journey, it was something created, or the term was coined by Joseph Campbell. And it's exactly what she explained. So today I'm here to talk about my own story, my hero's journey. And this isn't just unique to me. Everybody's the hero in their own story. So think about this. I'm here speaking about my story, but I want you to think and resonate about your own story, the challenge you face, and the obstacles that are coming with those challenges. So every hero's journey begins with a call to adventure, facing challenges, and then ultimately returning home as a new, renewed person. So today I'm here to share my hero's journey. That starts with my departure, my initiation, and ultimately my return back home. So this is my story. So where it all started off. This was my actual desk in Coral Gables, piles and piles of financial reports, tax returns, financial statements. It was pretty brutal. Let's go back. The year was 2004. I was working as a part-time teller at a bank. At that time, it was Regions Bank. And just finishing undergrad at FIU. I went into full-time, and within a few years, I was pretty ambitious. My career in banking taught me the value of persistence, customer relationships, and financial acumen. I worked my way up into private wealth management, and most of my clients at that time were late-stage entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs that had a lifetime of experiences. I was grateful enough and beneficial enough to have those experiences, to get to know them, understand their businesses, and their personal stories of how they actually got there. And I had this burning desire to do more. I was working as a CFP. I was a certified financial planner. If anybody's in finance knows that that's one of the most difficult exams to pass. It's really high in ethics, really high in fiduciary standards, and you're pretty much helping that entrepreneur to achieve all of their personal and professional goals. There was this internal drive that I wanted to sit on the other side of the table. I was constantly the banker helping other people with their finances, and I had the desire to actually sit on the other side of the table I wanted to be the client instead of the banker. And having these feelings within me, I didn't know what to do with it. I went to my friends, I spoke to my clients, I went to my managers, my mentors, people that I talked to. And this was one of the first lessons I learned on my journey. Is that who do you go to, who do you speak to when you really need advice, or you need that guidance and reflection and feedback to understand what is the next steps in your own life. So most of my superiors were telling me, I'm already 9 years into my career path. Don't give up. Keep going through. I have a really great career path in front of me. I've accomplished so much. I'm going to accomplish so much more. But I would look at them. I'll see their lives, their work life, their personal lives, and it's not something that I actually wanted for myself. And then I would actually speak to my clients. I'll tell them about my ambitions and my desires, my dreams, and they were always encouraging. They were the ones that were telling me that they would be fine without me. I didn't need to be their banker. And that to go on a sense of adventure, go see what the world had to offer. I was young, had no responsibilities or very minimal responsibilities. And at that point, I had to decide, who was I going to listen to? And guess what? I ended up wanting to change. So it really takes courage to embrace change and step into the unknown. Leaving a stable career was very scary, very scary. But embracing change was essential for my personal growth. So if you see here in the map, this is Miami, and I opted in for the biggest change of my life. I went to the other side of the world. I literally could not go any further. If you drill a hole straight down, you end up on the other side, and that's where I ended up going. And it was scary. It was a scary journey. But embracing the unknown is what life is all about. So I ended up moving to Singapore. I lived there for 4 years. I got deep into the startup industry, working with early stage founders. So in my banking career, I worked with late stage founders. When I moved to Singapore, I started with early stage founders. I got immersed with the startup scene, the beginning cohort with startup leadership program in Singapore. Also went to Malaysia with the Lean Startup Machine, and also was part of the founding and organizing team for Thailand Startup Week in Bangkok, Thailand. And it was a really great experience, learning different cultures, different ways of doing business on a global level. But I always felt there was something still challenging there for me personally, internally. Singapore was also felt like an extension of what I was leaving in the US. It was all about work, very money-driven, goal-oriented, and I wanted something more, something different. I kept hearing about this community of digital nomads. At the time, this was back in 2014, 2015. And digital nomads, I mean, now it's a little bit more common knowledge because of the pandemic, because of remote work. But back then, it was non-existent. These were kind of people on the fringes, people, the rebels, that are trying to do something different, live an alternative lifestyle. And it was scary, but I wanted to be a part of that and embrace the location independence freedom that entrepreneurship kind of provides, this sense of freedom. So again, I opted for more change. I uprooted from Singapore, where I had a comfortable home base. I moved to Chiang Mai, Thailand, up in the northern part of Thailand, and immersed myself with the digital nomad community. So living as a digital nomad, I had to learn how to adapt, and adapt quickly. There was constant change of environment, constant change of people, constant change of cultures, constant change of language. It was a constant change of everything. And when you're experiencing a lot of change, you learn how to adapt. And that adaptability is a skill set that I believe everybody needs to learn, because in my experience, the only constant in life is change. This is also where I started to retrace my roots, going back deep into yoga, deep into meditation, and reforming a connection into Tibetan Buddhism that I really didn't realize was present in my whole life with my grandfather's influence on my family. And being in Asia, it really helped me get in touch with my heritage, my background, and my story. So I was changing professionally and personally through all these experiences. One of my first experiences were actually to Bali. I stayed in an ashram for about a week. And this was my first time meditating 6 in the morning every single day, waking up for an hour and meditating, chanting, going through the whole ritual that they had in that time period with that location. And then also doing yoga. Evan also spoke a lot about yoga and how it applied in his life. It applied very deeply in my life as well too, sometimes taking 2 or 3 yoga classes per day. It was really a time to get back into myself, really learn deep into who I was and how I was showing up. Also, at the time, I also got into the philosophy of Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism specifically. And one of the first lessons that I learned about that was the connection between our inner world and our outer world, how we perceive the world internally within ourselves and how it manifests outside of ourselves. And we usually see things as black and white. It's either good or bad, this or that. And that's living in a dualistic life. And with Tibetan Buddhism, I learned how to kind of reframe my thinking, change my perspective, and see things in a non-dualistic way. And that's one of the biggest challenges I still face right now in my practice, trying to live that non-dualistic life. I also got into scuba diving. I became a dive master, and I bring that up because of this whole time, this is kind of the adventure side of things in my hero's journey. There was a lot of challenges also. I grew up with asthma, so I went underwater to kind of challenge myself and see how I could actually breathe. Can I actually expand my lungs? Can I hold my breath? And challenge myself in different ways to kind of push my body, push my spirit, push myself to my limits to see what I can and cannot accomplish. And ultimately, this was an internal exploratory journey. I was just seeing what I'm capable of, what I desires, what I wanted to accomplish, what I wanted to see, what I wanted to do. And it was a lot of realizations and a lot of rewards throughout this entire journey. So after doing all this transformational work, it was time to go back home. So if you remember here in the hero's journey, it was a call to adventure. You go through your journey, and then you eventually return back home as a new, renewed person. So after going through all these experiences and all this growth, it was time for me to come back home. And I focused back at my roots, but with a little shift on purpose-driven work. I went back to my foundations of finance and how can I apply that here with my renewed sense of vision, experiences, and perspective on life. And I found my purpose in helping entrepreneurs with their finances, helping them achieve their personal and professional goals. Financial empowerment. That's one of the most important things in entrepreneurship. If you don't have financial stability, no matter how good your products are, eventually it will fail. You have to have that steady cash flow, the ebbs and flows of life in order to keep refilling your cup, serving other people, refilling your cup, serving other people. Because if you can't do that, you'll eventually become bankrupt. You do not have more to give. So you have to find that balance within you and within your company, especially in your finances, in your financial statements, in the numbers, in the nitty-gritty things, in the details, in order for it to manifest in the rest of your business. So I took my expertise and my knowledge and brought it back to early stage entrepreneurs to help them build out their financial departments, talk to them on the individual level, learn about their businesses, learn about their personal goals, and try to find that balance of helping them help themselves and find that financial stability. But I couldn't stop there. I wanted to help people become the best version of themselves. So I wanted to ask everybody a question. Who here feels that they're the best version of themselves right now? 2 people? 3 people? I want to ask why. You raise your hand first.
Why?
Yes.
I feel fulfilled.
Awesome. Evan, why do you feel you're the best version of yourself right now?
Because I've been doing the work.
I love it. Why do you feel you're the best version of yourself?
Similar to Evan, I think I've been doing this work for 7 or 8 years now, and I'm just at a place where, I don't know, everything just feels really light and able to kind of like let the negative stuff go and just feel like, again, fulfilled as well, like very connected to purpose, which I think is a big part of it.
Love it. You raise your hand a little bit.
I struggle with this, so I was reluctant to raise my hand because I'm not 100% of the time being the woman, the person, the soul that I think God intended for me to be. But when I am in that zone, it's when I'm giving back.
I love it. In service of others. And I think Evan touched on it specifically. If we're doing the work and you're focused on the right things in your life, by default, right now you are the best version of yourself. By default. Because if you're not doing the work, you're not focused on what you're supposed to be focused on. You're focused on the things that don't matter. You're not reaching your full potential. You're distracted. So is the work. And what is the work? I believe work is taking the time to do the things that matter most in your life. That's the work. Taking the time to do the things that matter most in your life. I was called to create Weekly Men's Circle. Weekly Men's Circle is an authentic space where men could get together to talk about what matters most in their lives. In my entrepreneurship journey, I work with both men and women, but I noticed with men, they were a lot more closed off personally. They were a lot more tight. They would always have to be the provider, always having to have the solution, and they never had the real space to share authentically with each other. So I saw that void, and I wanted to create that space so that men can feel at home to share what's most important within them. So authentic connection, supporting each other's growth. That's probably at the core of it. Vulnerability is probably the second one. Most people consider vulnerability as a weakness. It's actually a strength. I might date myself, but who remembers Eminem and 8 Mile? No one? Barely anybody. Eminem's this famous rap artist. He's an amazing lyrics. And in his movie about his story at the end, it was a rap battle between him and this other person. And he had so many negative experiences happen in his life. And in that moment, he owned it. He owned his experiences, and he was vulnerable in that moment. He shared where his mother grew up. She was a drug addict, grew up on the wrong side of the train tracks. At the time, his best friend ended up sleeping with his girlfriend. He was backstabbed a couple times. He kind of just threw all of his stuff out in the open. He threw the microphone at the other person, and he told them, tell the audience something they don't know about me. And the person just shut down. He didn't have nothing to say, and he walked out of the rap battle. So vulnerability is owning your own story, your experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, and sharing it from a place of strength. That is true vulnerability. That is true strength. You are not held down by your experiences. You're held down by the story that you tell yourself about the experiences. So don't hold yourself back by your stories. Own it. It is part of who you are. And finally, lifelong learning. It's a journey. The first step about becoming the best version of yourself is continuous growth. Every step that you take is an opportunity to grow. Even me coming here today, sharing my story, as nervous as I was, this was me stepping into that uncomfortness in order to build more resilience, build more skills, improve my public speaking skills, and be able to share my story more freely. It's a continuous growth process. And one thing about lifelong learning that I realized, everybody wants a quick fix. They want a pill that's going to solve everything. They want that one retreat that's going to solve all their problems and transform them. And the reality of the situation is it never works that way. It's a continuous journey. What are you doing every single day? What are you doing every single week? What are you doing every single month? What are you doing every single year? And back to my finance days, I always pull this back out. It's a compound effect, dollar cost averaging. If you do something every single day, if you lay down one brick each day, eventually you're going to build a castle. You're going to build the vision that you see for yourself, the opportunities that you have for yourself. But it's that continuous process, continuously showing up, continuously doing the work, continuously building those authentic connections, continuously being vulnerable in strength. That's what ultimately creates the life that you're living. So in conclusion, self-empowerment. That's probably at the top. This belief in yourself that you're able to accomplish what you want to accomplish. Choosing to change your life. You have to choose to change your life. You have to have that desire. You have to make that decision for yourself to make a change in your life. But the great part is also you get to choose which parts of your life you want to improve. So if there is a part of your life that you are struggling with, that you want to improve, take that small step, take that small improvement. That continuous growth is what's going to create change. But you can only go so far alone. And this ties into the value of community support. You can't do it all alone. There's this saying, if you want to go quick, go alone. If you want to go far, let's go together. Community support is really important. So I urge you all to find a supportive community, something like the weekly men's circle, where you could grow, share, and thrive together. You need that supportive community in order to lift each other up, to learn from each other, have somebody see your blind spots, give you constructive feedback, give you some reflection, and just see the parts that you may not see in yourself. And ultimately, legacy and impact. What's your life purpose? Why are you here? What are you doing? These are questions that I want you to actually think about, visualize, and understand within yourself. What is it you're trying to accomplish and why? And ultimately, this is a quote I love, it's Socrates. It's the unexamined life is not worth living. It really dives deep into regular self-reflection, looking back at what you're doing, why you're doing it, why you did it, why you didn't do it, self-reflection, understanding how you act and why you're acting that way, understanding your path, realizing the progress you've made throughout this time, and then ultimately plan your future steps in order to create the life you want to live. Thank you very much. This is my contact information, Robert Sepulveda, and I appreciate your time. So yeah, for the weekly men's circle, we meet on the weekly basis in the groups. We have the monthly dinners as well too on the first Friday of every month to bring all the different groups and any other outside men that want to just learn about what we do and just meet the other men in the community. And then on an annual basis, we have an annual retreat. For the past couple years, we've been having it here in Florida. And then next year, we're going to do our first international retreat in Colombia. So we're going to be doing both domestic and international retreats. And a little bit about those retreats is just a more intensive what we do on a weekly basis, just for a couple hours every week. We do it on an entire weekend and be immersed with each other in that experience in a new environment. One thing about the new environment, you kind of, when you immerse yourself in a new environment, you kind of put down your guards. You're in a more vulnerable space and you share more openly and honestly. So it gives that change of environment to get out of the routine that you're in on a day-to-day basis back home, changes the environment. We do a lot of workshops, we do a lot of exercises, we do a lot of bonding, even between like the cooking and the cleaning and different exercises that we do together as a group. And it's a really great experience. Everybody always raves about it. They love the experience and the exercises that we do.
You said you have a dinner on the first Friday. Is that different groups or open to, who is that for?
So it's for all the different groups to come together and break bread. So we have 3 groups right now. One that meets on Wednesdays in Hollywood, one that meets online on Tuesday nights, and a new one on Monday that meets in Midtown in Miami. They're all men for those specific groups. We're toying with the idea to start launching entrepreneurship groups on the side that will be co-ed and just a little bit more focus on the business side of things as opposed to just the personal growth. So, but back to your question about the dinners. So it's an opportunity not just to know the men inside your group, because the groups are all small, intimate circles. So you get to know them and you have the time to share openly with them and with each other. And the dinner is an opportunity to meet all the other men from the different circles, come together, break bread, and have great conversation with great men.
And learn from other men that are doing the work. And 2 of the men that I met from the other group on the retreat were much further along on their path than I was, and I gleaned insight and inspiration and wisdom. One of them was a former monk, and had lived that path, but has acclimated back to society and still continues to do the work. So just being able to learn from other community members is a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, first of all, I think we were living in Chiang Mai at the same time.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny. So I have 2 daughters. My husband's Australian, so we're American-Australian, and we also have a bit of a residence down in Costa Rica. And so the third world culture thing is very important to me. What do you think about that upbringing helped shape how you view the world now?
Yeah, I always saw myself as a global citizen. In the US, I never quite fit in. I was too Hispanic, and I just didn't quite fit in. I would spend my summers in Colombia. When I was there, I was a gringo. I was a little bit too white. And then even in Asia, I was like, I just never fit in anywhere. But it kind of, at first it was a struggle because I never found my community. I felt like the outcast. But eventually owning my story and who I was, it felt like I could be a part of any community throughout all the entire world. And that, I think, was a strength in my experience, ultimately in the long run throughout my life. But I also feel like challenges that you have in your life ultimately become the strengths that you embody in the rest of your life. So, yeah, that's my feedback on that.
Any other questions?
Are you invited tomorrow, Chris?
Yes.
Does your weekly men's circle do anything with young boys or any kind of initiatives or give backs for young boys, maybe even through homes?
Yeah, that's something that we've been talking about. We want to do it. The initiative's there, but it's just the lack of action and trying to get it off the ground is the hardest. The 2 areas of philanthropy that we want to do is hosting men's circles in prisons to help them transition out back into society. And the second one is adolescence. So in high school and college time period, that's the time frame that they're most impressionable, trying to find their independence in life, trying to make decisions on their own. And that's the time I feel that most people need the most support, because at that point you could lead your lives in very different directions. So those are initiatives that we are talking about and wanting to do, but we don't have anything concrete yet.
Open to that. And we're